Chapter 8. How to Attract Prosperity. Fears and doubts repel prosperity. Abundance cannot get to a person who holds such a mental attitude. Things that are unlike in the mental realm repel one another. Trying to become prosperous while always talking poverty, thinking poverty, dreading it, predicting that you will always be poor, is like trying to cure disease by always thinking about it, picturing it, visualizing it, believing that you are always going to be sick, that you never can be cured. Nothing can attract prosperity but that which has an affinity for it, the prosperous thought, the prosperous conviction, the prosperity faith, the prosperity ambition. Opulence follows a law as strict as that of mathematics. If we obey the law, we get the opulent flow. If we disobey the law, we cut off the flow. Most of us tap the great life supply by inserting a half-inch pipe, and then pinch even this with our doubts, fears, and uncertainties. There is no lack in him in whom all fullness lies. The pinching, the limitation is in ourselves, for he satisfieth the longing soul, and filleth the hungry soul with good things. We must conquer inward poverty before we can conquer outward poverty. True prosperity is the inward consciousness of spiritual opulence, wholeness, completeness. We cannot feel poor when we are conscious of being enveloped in the all-supply, that God is our partner, our shepherd, and that we cannot want. A poor woman who had all her life previously lived in the back country moved to a progressive little village where, to her great surprise, she found that her new home was lighted by electricity. She knew nothing about electricity, had never even seen an electric light before, and the little 8-candle power electric bulbs with which the house was fitted seemed very marvelous to her. Later, a man came along, one day, selling a new kind of electric bulb, and asked the woman to allow him to replace one of her small bulbs with one of his new-style 60-candle power bulbs just to show her what it would do. She consented, and when the electricity was turned on, she stood transfixed. It seemed to her nothing short of magic that such a little bulb could give so wonderful a light, almost like that of sunlight. She never dreamed that the source of the new flood of illumination had been there all the time, that the enormously increased light came from the same current which had been feeding her little 8-candle bulb. We smile at the ignorance of this poor woman, but the majority of us are far more ignorant of our own power than she was of the power of the electric current. We go through life using a little 8-candle power bulb, believing we are getting all the power that can come to us, all that we can express or that destiny will give us, believing that we are limited to 8-candle power bulbs. We never dream that an infinite current, a current in which we are perpetually bathed, would flood our lives with a light inconceivably brilliant and beautiful, if we would only put on a larger bulb, make a larger connection with the infinite supply current. The supply wire we are using is so tiny that only a little of the great current can flow through, only a few candle power, when there are millions flowing past our very door. An unlimited supply of this infinite current is ours for the taking, ours for the expressing. Multitudes of human beings go through life just as ignorant as was the poor country woman of the fact that there is unlimited light and unlimited power flowing right past their doors ready for their use, and that they may use all of it they can express. They are getting no more from the vast resources at their command than this woman was getting from the electric current. They seem to think that if they are expressing 4-candle or 8-candle power, that it is all the infinite supply can give them, or all that they were intended to have. It never occurs to them that the trouble is not in the current itself, but in the small bulbs they are using. Millions have died in mental and physical penury, died weaklings, when they had within their own natures vast possibilities of wealth and power which were never utilized, because they did not connect with the source which would have enabled them to express wealth and power. Most of us strangle our supply by our pinching thoughts, our stingy, poverty thought, our doubt and fear thoughts. We pinch or entirely cut off the inflow of prosperity by our poverty-stricken mental attitude. The stream of plenty flows toward the open mind, the expectant mind. It flows toward faith and confidence and away from doubt. It will not flow toward a stingy, pessimistic, unbelieving mind, a fearing, worrying, anxious mind. We must keep the current open or the supply will be cut off. We cannot get a 60 or 100 candle power supply through a 4 or 8 candle power bulb. The stream of plenty, of unlimited opulence, is flowing right past your door, carrying an infinite, never-ending supply of all the good things that heart could wish for. If you have the faith that creates, the faith that believes the best is coming to you, you can reach out mentally into this great stream of plenty, the universal supply, and get material aid to build what you will. The supply is there. It rests with you to make the connection that will draw it to you. If all of the poverty-stricken people in the world today would quit thinking of poverty, quit dwelling on it, worrying about it, and fearing it, if they would wipe the poverty thought out of their minds, if they would cut off mentally all relations with poverty and substitute the opulent thought, the prosperity thought, the mental attitude that faces toward prosperity, they would soon begin to change conditions. It is the dwelling on the thing, fearing it, the worrying about it, the anxiety about it, the terror of it, that attracts us to it and attracts it to us. We cut off our supply current and establish relations with want, with poverty-stricken conditions. Many people who have become interested in the new philosophy are greatly disappointed that they are not making any appreciable demonstration over poverty, that they are not advancing their position in life, not improving their conditions as they had expected they would. Now, my friend, the law of abundance, of opulence, is as definite as the law of gravitation, and works just as unerringly. If you are not demonstrating as you expected to, you are probably still held under the bond of mental limitation, for there is no lack in him in whom all fullness lies. There is no limitation in the all supply. The trouble is you try to tap it with a miserable little half or quarter-inch pipe instead of a great big one, and the supply cannot flow through and flood your life with abundance. If you pinch your supply pipe with your doubts and fears, your anxiety, the terror of coming to want, if you do not believe you can demonstrate abundance, you will get but a meager, limited supply instead of the inexhaustible flow you might have. In other words, the supply pipe is pinched only by your own mental limitations. By your doubts and fears and worries and unbeliefs, you can cut off all the supply and starve, or, by a great magnetizing faith, a superb confidence in the all supply, you can flood your life with all good things. The law of supply is scientific. It will not act unless all the necessary conditions are fulfilled. Simply believing in the new philosophy and still keeping your old life doubts and fear habits, living in your old thought habits of lack and poverty, inefficiency, will not bring success. If you don't believe you will prosper and you don't practice what you believe, you will get no results. If you would reap its fruits, you must obey the law of supply, the law of abundance, the law of prosperity. Prosperity never comes by merely wishing or longing for it. Keeping your mind fixed on it, simply thinking of prosperity, will never bring it to you. This is only the first step. You must cling to your prosperity thought, your prosperity ideal, but you must also back it up with scientific methods, the practical common sense methods which all successful men employ in their work. You might dream of abundance and prosperity all your lifetime, and die in the poorhouse, if you did not back up your dream with business-like efficiency methods. That is, you must be methodical, orderly, systematic, accurate, thorough, industrious. You must do everything to a finish. You must fling your energy, your heart into your business, your profession, your work, whatever it is. One of the worst things about poverty is that it induces the habit of expecting poverty and failure, the habit of being half reconciled to its necessity. No matter how poor you may be, if you have the right mental attitude, you will not long remain poor. If you are determined to turn your back upon poverty and face toward prosperity, however your actual conditions may contradict this, if you really believe that you are a child of the Creator and possessor of all things, that you are not intended for poverty, but that on the contrary the good things, the beautiful things of life are for you, the life glorious and not the pauper or the drudge life, you at once open your mind to the inflow of the prosperity current. Have you, who are beating against the iron bars of poverty, ever stopped to think what marvelous things the Creator has everywhere provided for us as children? Just imagine the entire universe, the great cosmic ocean of creative intelligence, packed with all the riches, all the glorious things, the magnificent possibilities the human mind can conceive, and then try to picture what it would mean to you and to all who are complaining of lack and want if by some magic they could call out of this universal supply of creative intelligence anything which would match their desires, their heart longings. Imagine this vast universe, this ocean of creative energy, packed with possibilities from which human beings could draw everything which the wildest imagination could conceive, everything they desire in life, everything they need for comfort and convenience, even luxuries, also cities, railroads, telegraphs, and all sorts of wonderful inventions and discoveries. You will say, doubtless, that such a thing is too silly to contemplate for a moment. Yet, haven't human beings been doing this very thing since the dawn of civilization, all up through the ages? Every discovery, every invention, every improvement, every facility, every home, every building, every city, every railroad, every ship, everything that man has created for our use and benefit, he has fashioned out of this vast invisible cosmic ocean of intelligence by thought force. Everything we use, everything we have, every achievement of man is preceded by a mental vision, a plan. Everything man has accomplished on this earth is a result of a desire, has been preceded by a mental picture of it. Everything he has produced on this plane of existence has been drawn out of this invisible ocean of divine intelligence by his thought force. His imagination first pictured the thing he wanted to do, he kept visualizing this mental conception, never stopped thinking, creating, until his efforts to match his visions with their realities drew to him the thing he had concentrated on. We all imagine that we actually, of ourselves, create these things. We do not. We simply work in unison with the Creator, and draw them out of the vast invisible cosmic ocean of supply. But we must do our part or there will be no realization for us. Just as the first step in an architect's building is his plan, so must we first make a plan or picture of the thing we desire. The architect first sees in all its details in his mind's eye the building to be erected even before he draws his plan on paper. He mentally sees the real building long before there are any materials on the spot for its construction. His plan has come out of the invisible, out of the fathomless ocean of possibilities which surrounds us. All of our wants and desires can find their fulfillment in this unlimited supply. This is a marvelous revelation to him, the significance of which most of us have not grasped. Only here and there is there one who utilizes it in his daily living. But science is recognizing it. Edison says all scientists feel that about and through everything there is the play of an eternal mind. They are recognizing that this is the first great cause. It is difficult to realize that every instant, under the impulse of eternal mind, miracles are leaping out from the cosmic ocean of energy into objectivity to meet our wants, to supply all our needs. Most of us are not able to grasp the idea that there is wealth and beauty and unthinkable luxuries waiting here for God's children. And because of this, we do not materialize the things we desire. It is one of the most marvelous things, in this wonderful plan of creation, that we actually live, move, and have our being in this invisible ocean of limitless creative material, and that all we have to do to attract what we want is to hold the right mental attitude toward it and do our best on the physical plane to match it with its reality. Noah might have lighted the ark had he known enough. The force was there just as today. When we once get it firmly fixed in our minds that in this invisible world of possibilities is everything which matches every legitimate desire and ambition, and that our own will come to us if we visualize it intensely enough, persistently enough, and do our best to make it real, we will no longer live in poverty and misery. If you want to get away from poverty, if you wish to demonstrate abundance, prosperity, you must form the habit of mentally living in abundance, live in the ideal of what you want, that is, you must live the 116 prosperity thought, you must hold the thought of abundance. Saturate yourself with it. Then the poverty thought cannot touch you. It will be neutralized because you cannot hold in your mind two opposite thoughts at the same time, and whatever thought you hold is a real creative force. The great majority of poor people are poor thinkers, poor planners, and poor executives. They do not think prosperity, they do not obey the law of opulence, and so they stay poor in the midst of abundance. You can no more attain opulence while holding the opposite thought than a youth could become a great lawyer by concentrating upon something else, thinking of other things all the time. The specialist makes his mind a magnet to attract the thing he is trying to attain. He dwells upon it, thinks of it, bends all his energies toward it, dreams it, lives it, and eventually draws it to him. In the same way, opulence, prosperity, obeys the law of attraction. The idea of opulence must be implanted firmly in the subconscious mind, just as everything else which we desire to bring about, to draw out of the universal supply, must be impressed upon the subconscious mind by registering our vow, our determination there until it has become a fixed motive or actuating principle. Then it becomes an active influence in the life, an ever-increasing mental magnet that attracts the thing desired. Whatever we wish to bring about in the actual, we must first establish in the subconscious mind by a constant, positive, affirmative attitude toward that thing. It is because they understand the importance, the imperative necessity, of this holding of the right mental attitude, that there is such a tremendous difference between the poverty of people who have imbibed the new thought philosophy and those who are still in the old thought. It is the difference between poverty with hope, poverty with courage, poverty with the expectation of something better coming, backed by a faithful effort to improve one's condition, and the poverty which is accompanied by despair, the poverty that has no hope for the future, the poverty that expects nothing better, that looks forward only to more and probably worse poverty, more pinching, more want and suffering. Even the poverty with hope and expectation of better things is not a very comfortable state, but there is no despair in it, there is no real pain in it, there is not much real distress, because hope sees the goal beyond the blackness, it gives a light that dispels the gloom of limitation by showing a vista of good things in process of realization. It is the poverty which is accompanied by despair, which sees no light ahead and forces men and women to drudge on day after day without prospect of relief or hope of betterment, that grinds the life out of its victims. This is the poverty that kills the spirit, that destroys the buoyancy of life, the gladness and the joy, which are the birthright of every human being. The poverty of those who have seen the light, who have gotten a glimpse of something, the poverty which sees something ahead to work for, may be compared with the temporary discomforts which a family camping out in the summer may have to put up with. Knowing that their discomforts are temporary, they make light of them. They do not impair their happiness, because they know conditions will soon change. They do not worry about their situation as they would if it were permanent and could not be remedied. There are multitudes of ignorant, undeveloped people who are like many of the squatters on the desert in the arid lands of the West. These squatters build shanties and cultivate little patches around them, raising a few domestic animals to help them eke out a living. They barely exist, and yet the very soil from which they hardly get a living is rich with vast potencies, possibilities of bounteous harvests, and the production of great wealth. If these people knew enough to mix brains with the soil, or if they would only settle somewhere near a supply of water so that they could irrigate their farms, they might live in luxury. There is nothing lacking in the land, but it must have water and intelligence to develop its resources. These would make the desert fruitful. Water and intelligence mixed with the soil would perform miracles of cultivation where ignorance succeeds in producing scarcely enough to support a miserable existence. Not far from such ignorant squatters, I have seen a portion of the same desert land enriched by water and intelligent cultivation until it had become a veritable Eden of delicious fruits, vegetables, grains, and flowers. Large families were living comfortably on an incredibly small piece of land, whereas before the introduction of water they would have half-starved on perhaps 100 acres. Most human beings live all their lives on deserts, which are teeming with marvelous potencies and possibilities, but for lack of knowledge they live in poverty. Their mental resources yield nothing because they have not yet been developed. Some of us get a little irrigation into a corner of our lives and raise a few vegetables. Some of us cultivate a few flowers, and now and then one will get water and inspiration and ambition enough upon a little larger section of his mental desert and produce something worthwhile. But very few human beings ever cultivate their entire resources. The new philosophy teaches us how to get hold of our resources, and how to use them, so as to get just what we want. It teaches us that the source from which all things spring is in the great cosmic intelligence which fills all space, and that in this vast cosmic ocean riches inconceivable are waiting to be objectified and utilized by man. It teaches us that all these things will respond to the right thought, the right motive, and that we can call out everything we desire from this all supply. It holds that the reason why our lives are so lean, so pinched and poor, why our achievement is so limited, so picayune, in comparison with what we are capable of, is because we do not draw upon the all supply. Our narrow, limited, dwarfed ideals, our poverty-stricken view of things, the limitations our own thought imposes, these are the things that rob us of power and keep us in poverty. Our achievements or our possessions can never outrun our convictions or our ideals. We fix our own limitations. When a man gets lost in the woods, he cannot tell the direction in which he is facing, because he has lost the points of the compass. Unless a man so lost can see the sun and recover his bearings, he will walk around in a circle, thinking he is going in a straight line in a certain direction. He makes no advance because he isn't facing toward his goal. He doesn't know this, but after a while, when he finds he is not getting toward any opening and doesn't know how long he may wander about in a circle, he gets discouraged. Millions of people are lost in the dense woods of wrong thought. They are not traveling toward the goal of prosperity. They see no light, no way out of the woods, and they lose courage. They are turned about mentally and don't know it. If the people in the Great Failure Army today could only be given prosperity treatments and shown that they are in their present predicament because of their wrong mental attitude, because they have been working for one thing and expecting something else, if they could only be turned squarely about so that they would face the goal of their desire instead of turning their backs upon it mentally, an enormous number of them would even yet make a splendid success of their lives. That is all that millions of people who are comparative failures in life, as well as the complete down and outs, need, to be turned about so they would face life in the right direction. What a pity it is that in this land of opportunity and plenty our government should not have institutions conducted by experts for the treatment of poverty sufferers, those who are obsessed with the idea that their poverty is unavoidable. These people are just as much in need of prosperity treatments as the patients in hospitals are in need of health treatments. Most of them are curable. They have only lost their way on the life path and are facing the darkness instead of the light, facing towards the poverty goal instead of the prosperity goal. Their mental attitude needs changing so it will point toward success instead of toward failure, toward comfort and plenty, opulence, instead of poverty and limitation. Mental prosperity treatments would kindle a new hope in their discouraged minds, and expectancy of good things would take the place of despair. A new light would come into the eyes of those poor people, and if these prosperity treatments were administered to poverty sufferers in every country of the globe, the world would take on a different appearance. The time is coming when the state will have trained specialists, experts in the law of mental opulence, to give such treatments to the men and women who are in the Great Failure Army, those who are headed in the wrong direction, those who have lost their way on the life path. But there is no need for those now suffering from poverty to wait for the coming of that time to be cured. Any intelligent person can apply the law and treat himself for prosperity. Mental laws are clear and simple. We know that the fear thought attracts more fear, the worry thought more worry, the anxious thought more anxiety, the hatred thought more hatred, the jealous thought more jealousy, and the poverty thought more poverty. This is the law of attraction. Like every other law, it is unalterable. The poverty disease can be cured only by its antidote, the prosperity thought. You carry within you this antidote to the poison of poverty, of lack, of pinching, dwarfing limitation. Use it and cure yourself. The prosperity thought will kill the poverty germ. Keep your supply pipes open between yourself and the infinite source of all supply. Don't pinch them by doubt, don't cut off the supply by limiting, pinching, poverty, lack thought. Keep your supply pipes wide open by the consciousness of your oneness with the One, your connection with the all-supply. Abundance follows a law as exact as that of the law of mathematics. If we obey it, we get the flow. If we pinch it, strangle it, we cut off the supply. Suppose a youth who had decided to study medicine and become a doctor should say to himself, I cannot picture myself as a success because I don't know anything about what may come to me. Perhaps I haven't the qualifications that make a successful physician. I may never become one. I may be a failure. I doubt if I am fitted for it, but I'll try, anyway. Do you think such a timid, doubting, negative attitude would ever carry anyone to the success goal? Of course it wouldn't. The young medical student who is going to succeed is the one who pictures himself constantly as a successful physician, sees himself in a fine office, with a lucrative practice, climbing to the top of his profession. He is constantly visualizing himself as a successful physician. Now, the same rule applies to the poor man who wants to become prosperous. He must picture himself as prosperous, he must obey the law of opulence. By holding the ideal of opulence in his mind, he must saturate himself with the prosperity thought, the thought of abundance. If you wish to cure yourself of the poverty disease, you should begin by giving yourself prosperity treatment, something like this. Say to yourself, if I am God's child, I have inherited all the good things of the universe. I am heir to all supply, to the all good. Poverty cannot touch the reality of me any more than disease can, for the reality of me is health. Health is the everlasting fact, and disease, sickness, is merely the absence of the reality. Poverty is not my normal condition. There can be no lack, no poverty for God's image. All that my Father hath is mine. Repeat daily the 23rd Psalm, The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures, he leadeth me beside the still waters, etc. Follow this during the day with frequent assertions of your kinship with the Creator of all the universe. Commit these lines by Ella Wheeler Wilcox to memory, and frequently say them to yourself, vigorously, and with the force of absolute conviction, I am success. Though hungry, cold, ill-clad, I wander for a while, I smile and say, it is but for a time, I shall be glad tomorrow, for good fortune comes my way. God is my Father, He has wealth untold, His wealth is mine, health, happiness, and gold. All the good things you need are yours by inheritance. Claim them, expect them, work for them, believe they are already yours, and you will realize them in your life. If you continually assert your kinship with God your Father, to whom all things belong, and send out the vigorous thought of abundance, a generous supply of all you need, which is your birthright, poverty cannot hold you its slave. I was recently talking with a man who only a few years ago was so poor that he and his wife and children were reduced to a diet of bread and crackers without butter. They couldn't pay even the cheapest rent or buy themselves comfortable clothing. In fact, they were rapidly heading toward the ranks of the down and outs. Today they are living in luxury, in a sumptuous hotel. They own a beautiful car, and have all they need to make life comfortable. They do not appear like the same people who but a comparatively short time ago were in a condition of semi-starvation. Whence the change? Did someone leave them a fortune, or did they find a gold mine? No, nothing of that sort at all. They simply realized that their poverty was of their own making, that the cause of their miserable condition was entirely mental. And then they turned their backs on their despair environment and resolved that, no matter what appearances were, they would face the light and struggle toward it. As a result, they began in a very short time to attract better things. The whole family has now taken a new lease of life. The expression of despair and misery has gone out of their faces, and is replaced by the light of hope and joy. There is just the difference in their appearance and condition between despair and gladness, between the hope and expectation of more of the good things which belong to them, and the fear of want, the misery of grinding limitations. Psychology is teaching us that all forms of discouragement, despondent thoughts, thoughts of doubt, of fear, of worry, must be kept out of the mind, for it cannot create while these enemies are in possession of the mental kingdom. We are finding that in order to create, to build, we must hold a constructive mental attitude all the time, that we must keep all negatives, all thoughts of discouragement, despondency, of possible failure out of the mind. We are learning through psychology that we can produce only that which we concentrate upon, that which we constantly think of, that only that which is dominant in our mind, whether it is beneficial or injurious, will be reproduced in our lives. Your mental attitude will lead you into the light or hold you in darkness. It will lead you to hope or despair, to a glorious success or a miserable failure, and it is entirely within your own power to choose which it shall be. Successful people, without knowing it, perhaps, are constantly giving themselves prosperity treatments, success treatments, by encouraging themselves, by making their minds positive, so that they will be immune from all negative, discouraging, poverty thought currents. Holding the success thought, the prosperity ideal, constantly dwelling upon one's successful future, expecting it, working for it, these are, whether you know it or not, success, prosperity treatments. Take, for example, men like Charles Schwab. Ever since Mr. Schwab was a poor boy starting in life, he has been giving himself success treatments. He has held the ideal of prosperity, the vigorous, robust, determined action to be successful, to be prosperous. He has always faced the prosperity goal. If he had allowed himself to yield to the many discouragements he has had, he never would have been the world's greatest steel master today, perhaps the greatest that ever lived. But he always triumphed over these negative, destructive, discouraging thoughts by insisting on holding to the prosperity, the success, ideal. Suppose that every little while Mr. Schwab should stop holding the success ideal and should indulge in discouraging, despondent thoughts, allow himself to get down in the dumps and feel that good fortune was deserting him, what do you think the result would be? Why, he would probably lose more in a single day by such negative treatments than he could neutralize in a week of prosperity treatments. Every time you indulge in discouraging and gloomy, despondent thoughts, every time you allow yourself to get down in the dumps or in the blues, you are tearing down what you have been trying to build up by your success treatments, by holding the prosperous thought. Your attitude is hostile to prosperity, and your very atmosphere blights and strangles it. You practically say, "I long to have you, Mr. Prosperity, but I don't believe I ever will. You are evidently not intended for me, for everything I do ends in failure. There must be some strange fate that is keeping me from the success and prosperity I want. I really never expect to be prosperous, although I am working hard to get you, Mr. Prosperity." It is such a mental attitude as this that is driving prosperity away from multitudes of people. If you want to better your condition, you must get away from the conviction of poverty. You must keep the want thought, the poverty thought and conviction out of your mind, for these connect you all the time with the poverty and the lack thought currents from other like minds. Multitudes of people through ignorance of the law condemn themselves to lives of poverty. They do not realize that, every time they think or say that they never expect to get away from the clutches of want, that no matter how hard they work there is nothing but the everlasting drudgery, grind and poverty for them, that fate is against them and they are doomed to remain poor, they are confirming and strengthening poverty conditions. If we are ever going to enjoy abundance, we must talk abundance and freedom, not poverty and limitation. We must think abundance and not dam the stream of our supply so that we will get little drizzles instead of a generous flow. What would you think of a prince who should go away from his father's palace and live in a poverty-stricken environment, in the midst of lack and want, and who should constantly claim that he couldn't do any better, that this was what was intended for him? You would say that it was his own fault, that there was plenty in his father's house, and that it was his any time he chose to claim it, that the fatted calf and the royal robe were always waiting for him. Yet most of us act just as foolishly. There is plenty of everything waiting for you in the all supply in our Father's house. It is yours by right of inheritance. Why don't you claim it? You cannot get it until you do claim it, any more than the prodigal son could enjoy his father's bounty while he continued to put it from him and feed instead on the husks of swine. Prosperity, or opulence, in the larger sense in which we use it, is everything that is good for us, an abundance of all that is beautiful, uplifting, and inspiring in life. It is everything that will enrich the personality, the experience, the spiritual life. This opulence, which includes everything we can desire, is intended for all God's children. All we have to do to participate in it is to reach out into the cosmic intelligence with our thought, with our ideals, our aspirations, and attract our own